Welcome to the Compose Like a Girl podcast. I'm your founder, host, and composer, Jocelyn Hagan. My Compose Like a Girl initiative amplifies female identifying composers, helps conductors diversify their concerts, and works toward more equality in music programming and commissioning. I've been sitting down for conversations with some amazing composers, and I want to invite you into these deeper explorations of art and life. I hope you leave with some inspiration, just as I did. On today's episode, I'm sharing a recent conversation I had with B.E. Boykin, a marvelous composer and educator. The very first time I heard Britney's music, it was in the shape of art song, one of my favorite genres. Her music is beautifully lyrical and complemented with a rich, gorgeous piano accompaniment. It's no surprise that she's being consistently sought after in the opera community and beyond. I'm also honored to call her a friend, a relationship that began through publishing her music and serving as her editor. If you want to hear our full conversation, become a supporter by joining our Compose Like a Girl initiative on Patreon. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy. Well, hello, Brittany. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to talk to you again.
I know.
Well, I'm just going to dive in with some questions and start with
Yeah.
a very, very simple one that is because I work so closely with your scores as your publisher.
Yeah.
It's just something that I've been kind of wondering about and thought, well, this is a perfect time to ask you about it.
Okay.
On your scores, you use your initials BE instead of your first name, which is Brittany.
Yes.
May I ask what led you to this decision?
Oh, yeah. So when I first started composing, or at least trying to be really serious about it, I felt like sharing my music with people of interest or even publishers, it just didn't seem to go well. And I felt like I maybe, just having a little bit of insecurity. I was like, I feel like it's because of my name. Brittany, you already know, like, it's mostly commonly associated with being like a feminine name. And so I was just like, you know what? Let's just try to remove that. And hopefully, maybe they'll maybe give me a chance if maybe it's just my initials. So that's why I was like, let me just focus on BE. So Brittany Elizabeth. So my full name is Brittany Elizabeth Boykin. So I was like, let's just try BE Boykin and see where that goes. Yeah. So the hope was to try to remove the identity of being a woman.
Hmm. And did it work?
You know what? I'm not sure. I felt like I still wasn't getting as much maybe traction as I wanted to. But I think it was mostly because like when people would meet me in person, then obviously then they would probably see that I'm a woman and then I'm black. Like I just felt like there were probably a lot of different like intersections probably working against me at that time. And keep in mind, this is not something that's like 30 or 40 years ago. This is like maybe like 10 or
Yeah.
7. It's like fairly recent. So yeah, so I was like, you know what? We're just going to keep the BE Boykin at that time. And I felt like I just kind of liked the way it read on paper. And then I was like, oh, all these other phenomenal artists and phenomenal thinkers that use their initials, whether it's a man or a woman. I was like, let's just own our initials because at the end of the day, be it that I'm a composer, I'm a woman, I'm a Black woman composer, it's still my name. And so I was like, I think we can kind of embrace BE Boykin too.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, you're a pianist, a conductor, and an educator, which is a lot. That's already a lot. Was composition always a part of the plan?
So composition was always like a hobby. It was just something on the side. I think maybe like in middle school, I was just kind of writing, doing the songwriting thing. I had a notepad. I dabbled in music technology with like a little bit of production. And yeah, I just had like a notebook with some songs. So formal composition probably didn't come around until Spelman College. I believe that was my sophomore year. And all of the music majors and minors had to take an introduction to composition class as part of the curriculum. And so, yeah, that was my first kind of formal composition class. And that was my only class. And that was kind of where things started to shift a little bit. Songwriting then turned into, homework assignments that were arrangements of Negro spirituals or instrumental or, solo instrument exercises. And so it just kind of allowed me to kind of expand and kind of visually see how things could be on the page. And it was just a very cool class. And so I'm glad that it was required, because otherwise I don't think I ever would have dabbled into composition the way that I have right now.
Yeah, I mean, that is a really unusual requirement for a music degree. I don't think I've ever actually even heard of it I mean, because usually they incorporate maybe some small
Yeah,
compositional exercises within the theory curriculum, but
right, right.
never just an entire class devoted to the introduction
Yeah.
of
Yeah, no,
composition.
that is interesting. And now that you say that, yeah, I don't know if I've heard of that either. So yeah, that's very interesting
Wow.
how that worked out.
Yeah, in that class, you said you were a sophomore?
Yeah, I was a sophomore.
How many pieces did you write in that class?
Ooh, we probably had, every so often there was a homework assignment. And again, it could be like a Negro spiritual or just an exercise for a solo instrument, or, I mean, depending on what the prompt was. But I just remember there was one homework assignment where it was like a particular prompt and you had to pick a Negro spiritual and you had to arrange it for treble voices, because the Spelman College Glee Club at the
Mhm.
time was singing, a lot of things, and the director of the Glee Club was actually the instructor for the class. And
Huh.
so, yeah, so I picked Go Down Moses, and that ended up being like my very first like choral composition for treble voices, but it came out of a homework assignment.
That is amazing, and it makes me think, how many other composers would we find if
Right?
that were a part of the curriculum in
Yeah.
more schools?
Yeah. No, agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
it also just gives you the empowerment that, yeah, this is a skill that you can learn how to do, and everybody here is gonna learn how to do it. I think
Right.
that's really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, because up until that point, I wasn't thinking about composition. I wasn't thinking about being a composition major. I was a piano performance major, but everyone was in that class. Whether you were an instrumentalist or a vocalist, it was like you were required. Everyone was required to take that class. And so it just shows that, like, if you're maybe given the opportunity and you're kind of maybe encouraged slash required to take a class, you never know what will come out of it.
Yeah, man, I really hope that there are some people in academia listening to this conversation because, the way we teach theory, I think, is also changing in the 21st century. Because I remember when I was getting my degrees, like, or in my undergraduate degree, Theory 4 was a
Yeah,
class that was all that, 20th century music theory. And you get really deep into set theory and 12 tone composition and, you know, and you had to, I think, write little pieces in all those styles and thinking about how much does a typical music educator use that skill, or would a skill that's just about more learning how to write music, any kind of music, would that be more beneficial than learning?
right,
I mean, it's important to know about all the things we went through, in the 20th century when it comes to composition and the different techniques of that those composers were trying. But I think giving young musicians the confidence that they can learn how to write music and should do
exactly.
it is probably
Exactly.
more beneficial, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, not just with composition, but even with like piano skills. I just think some of those courses as a music major and or minor, they just help to kind of really, really embolden and support young artists in a way that is needed. And so I definitely agree with you.
Yeah. So in your current situation, do you teach any composition classes or lessons?
No, no, I do not. I have two choirs at Georgia Tech, and then I kind of rotate through a theory course sequence, but not composition, not yet.
Okay. But do you hope to?
I think I'm okay for right now. I think
Yeah.
I'm okay. I think I'm enjoying just my choirs. My choirs are the best. I just really enjoy working with those students. So I think I'm okay with choir for right now.
Yeah. Well, and composition is a tricky thing to teach anyway. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And I feel like most of it is just, support, which you can also show as a choir conductor and not necessarily as a composition professor.
Exactly. Yeah, because I've even had a few students, say, "Hey, Dr. Boykin, I've been, experimenting either with note flight or whatever," and maybe they'll introduce, a piece, or maybe it'll be student led. So there is still room for composition advising, maybe, if you will,
Yes.
in choirs still. So I've enjoyed that part.
That's wonderful. Well, what's your favorite thing to write? Do you have a favorite kind of music to write or instrumentation to write for?
I don't, but I think I'm probably most comfortable with choral music. I love treble voices. I probably, since that's where I kind of got my start at Spelman, I think I'm more inclined to write for treble voices, but I think I like anything choral.
Well, that's how my husband Tim first came to know your work. He sang a piece with
Oh,
vocal essence and just loved it. It was
oh,
John
cool.
3:16, I think is the
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then he sent me your name. He's like, "You've got to look up this composer and see what she's writing." And what I found on YouTube was a bunch of your art songs, which I loved.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, art song is something that I kinda grew into as well, but choral music came first, but, that's just the beauty of composition, like, once you're in it and it's like, "Oh, you can write for all of these other things, solo voice with piano, or maybe even, like, a string quartet, or maybe organ." Like, I just wrote my first organ piece last year,
Ooh.
so it's just, just being able to kinda explore and have a little fun.
Yeah. Well, it's so evident to me as a pianist when I sit down to play your music that you also are a pianist and value that relationship and that collaborative energy between singers and pianist. And I just really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, I definitely try. I mean, I think, it's interesting. I was also the accompanist for the Spelman College Glee Club when I was a student. And I just remember sometimes, playing through pieces and I'm like, I wish the piano was doing a little bit more, but I get, not trying to overbear the choir, but I'm like, I wish it was just a little bit more interesting. So I do try to keep that in mind, as I'm writing. I'm like, can I play it? Is it playable? But is it exciting? Is it pretty? Does it get in the
Mhm.
way? So just some things that I try to think about when I'm writing.
Yeah. I wanted to definitely take some time today to talk about this really big project you have coming up with the Minnesota Opera because I'm really excited because Minnesota is my home state. So that means you're going to come
Yes,
hang out here. But can you please
yes.
just tell us all a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the New Works Initiative, I hope I get these dates right, is a cohort of three composers and three librettists over the span of about 7 years. So I believe officially kind of starting 2024 into 2031. And over the course of those 7 years, we'll be kind of paired with each other to create new works. So each composer, librettist team will put out a song cycle, a chamber opera, and a full opera. So it is a lot of really cool, exciting things. And of course, I mean, it's just a really great cohort. So I'm just really excited and grateful. But I'm excited to, yeah, to be in Minneapolis every once in a while to hang out with y'all.
Well, and it's also, if I'm right, a new way to fund something like this too, because, often as composers, we get kind of large chunks, like we'll get maybe a down payment to write a piece, and then we
Mm,
receive another large chunk when the piece is turned in, when it's done. But
right.
this is it's like a monthly stipend, right?
Yeah, so it's a very unique kind of opportunity, and it just shows, their mission and their passion for supporting artists in a long-term way. So it allows, some flexibility, but just kind of encouragement with that monthly stipend, but just kind of, yeah, like we're contracted for 7 years and then we're putting out these works. But yes, we do receive a monthly stipend, and it's very cool.
Yeah, I really love that idea about just as a way to support artists in a different way, in a more just consistent
Yeah.
way, consistent support. Because so often, I don't know about you. Well, you have a full time, conducting and professorship job, but
Yeah.
my husband and me, we're writing full time, and
Oh,
so depending on how those checks come and go, like we definitely have cash lows, and it can just be a little bit more stressful sometimes if our projects don't line up in a way that works very well. So I love this idea of consistent support, and
support.
yeah,
Mhm,
and for
mhm.
7 years, that's
Yeah,
amazing. And residencies are so special for artists because I think it's a great opportunity to grow. Like you learn so much
yeah.
when you're working with the same people over and over again, like that those relationships get strengthened and you start to trust each other more.
Yeah, and we're all just so different. I think that's why I was so excited to be welcomed into the cohort because everyone's very different and unique in what they do. And I'm very excited to see what we're able to create.
Yeah, I'm just thrilled for you. And
Oh, thank you.
yeah, and, well, and I also think, you'll probably remember this as a very special time in your career and hopefully get some lifelong friends and colleagues out of it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, like you said, going back to the idea of like having this support and it being in like this long term way, it's relieved so much stress of just trying to like figure out and create and have deadlines to just kind of just know that you have this kind of support structure behind you. It's alleviated a lot of from me, or at least alleviated a lot of things on my side. So I'm like, I'm able to maybe take a few steps back and really focus on this and try to like pour everything that I have into this program. Opera is a very new thing for me. And, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier on. Like, that's the beauty of composition, like all of these different directions you can go in. I never thought I would be writing choral music, let alone opera. So it's very different. And I think I've just been wanting to be able to spend as much time with it as possible, whether that's researching, listening, going to see your opera, Song Poet, which was
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and just traveling and trying to see as much opera as I can and trying to focus on it.
Oh, that's great. Well, and also, you can extract some of those choruses,
I
um
hope
for
so.
choral pieces. Yeah. Well, like there's that one duet at the end of Song Poet that I think I'm going to pull out and extract and make it for a two-part treble because I think it would work really well for that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
you can keep that in the back of your mind as like, "Oh, well, this could maybe be a possibility
See,
too."
that's why we need to talk offline too, because I already know. I'm like, Jocelyn has the gems that I need in order to be successful in this opera world. So we will be talking offline
Oh, oh,
too.
you're so sweet. That is so yes, and please do. I would really love that. But that reminds me of what we were talking about at the gala, and that's just that mentorship is
Hmm.
so important, but also just friendship in
Yeah.
this community. I grew up in my 20s with another composer, Abby Bettinas, and we learned so much from each other all the time, just with how we were learning the ins and outs of what it takes to have a life in composition. And I'm just so grateful for that relationship.
Yeah.
Who have been some of your mentors, and why are those relationships so important to you?
I always get in trouble when I start naming folks because I feel like I always leave people out. But Dr. William Mennefield, phenomenal jazz musician at the University of Iowa, and recently premiered his first opera with Cincinnati Opera last summer, actually called Fierce, which was just mind blowing and incredible because he was able to fuse a lot of different genres into opera that I had never heard before, like hip hop and jazz and gospel. And so it really was just a great introduction for me listening and going to see an opera and seeing someone experiment with the different styles in that way. So shout out to Will. Hey, Dr. Mennefield.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Darren Atwater, a phenomenal orchestrator from back home, DC area, chartered the Soulful Symphony. And so I grew up going to some of his concerts and listening to some of his orchestrations. He's really well known for orchestrating a lot of Richard Smallwood's music early on. And so Brandon Waddles, Marcus Garrett. Just drawing blanks now. Stephanie Powell. But there's just a lot, and like you said, community is just so important, and so it's just really nice to be able to just know these people and to really call on them as friends, and to have real relationships with these people, and to be vulnerable and to have that space to be vulnerable with them. That's what has made my journey so special. And so I love and appreciate all of them, and they know who they are in my tribe.
Mhm.
What's up, y'all?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, and back at you, what I think I want from you is a listening list of all these new things that I should be listening to because of
Oh
course,
yeah, of course.
yeah,
Yeah.
those names and that music is new to me. So yeah, you're gonna have to make me a list too.
Okay. Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about We Wear the Mask?
Yeah, we wear the mask. So that was during COVID, I believe. That was one of my COVID commissions, coming from a group based in New York City called the Mirror Visions Ensemble. They had commissioned me a few years prior to that for another art song, and so they really wanted a Paul Lawrence Dunbar piece. And then COVID happened, and they just kind of tried to make it work. So it was a video premiere during that year. But Abby Levis is the soprano, and Grant Weenus is the pianist. But just phenomenal duo, very special text. And I just thought it was very ironic to kind of set We Wear the Mask
Hmm.
during COVID
Yeah.
for a number of different reasons. I mean, between just COVID and then the idea of people being behind a mask and masking certain feelings and emotions, and with everything that we were experiencing that year, it was just a very just tumultuous year all around. And so it was just very eye opening in a lot of different ways for me. And so I wanted to kind of experiment with the idea of spelling out the word face. So in the piano kind of interlude, and maybe throughout, maybe towards the end, you can literally hear or see the word face spelled out in the piano.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so it's just kind of a heart wrenching kind of call for reckoning and social justice, and maybe challenging, you know, a challenge of self reflection. So it's a very special piece. It's very near and dear to me.
We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to humankind. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. We wear the mask. not the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask.
How do you usually find your poetry?
Uh, I normally like to sift through and see what sticks, but for that particular commission, they had presented a few different options, and then I think we just kind of both agreed on We Wear the Mask.
And one of your most popular choral works is Holding the Light, which
Yeah,
we're very happy to publish. Can you
yeah.
tell us a bit about that piece too?
Yes, another commission. I believe Jordan Schomper, and we were figuring out text, and again, I want to believe that fell during COVID as well, and so we were trying to stay away from messages about kind of sadness or anything kind of really downtrodden because it again was such a difficult year for everybody. So we were trying to focus a lot on text about hope or light. And so I just happened to find this beautiful poem by Stuart Kestenbaum, who is a living poet, and we just fell in love with the text. And I was just grateful that when I reached out to Stuart and I told him, hey, like, we really love your poem. Like, is it okay that we have permission to set this? And he has just been amazing to work with. So shout out to Stuart and for him giving us permission to do this work. And but yeah, it's just a beautiful text because it focuses on imagery of light. And I think what drew me to it was the kind of religious yet non-religious message behind it. It was basically just saying, whatever it is that is bringing you hope or giving you light or life in this world, it's okay. And it just seemed kind of all encompassing. And I'm just like, well, what a powerful message that is for the world that we live in. Like, we're so different. We come from different backgrounds. We have different religions and genders and all of these things, and it should just still be okay. We're not kind of tied to that. We're connected from our humanity, and I thought it was just a beautiful message within that poem.
I know that, you're pretty busy for the next 7 years with with Minnesota Opera and these opera commissions. But
Yeah.
is there a dream project that you have for composition that's like, this someday I'm gonna do this? Is there, some
Yeah.
big shiny star up there for you?
Yeah, shiny star. And if it doesn't happen, cool. But, in the back of my head, I'm like, I would really love to score a major film.
Ah, yeah.
I would love to do that. But if it doesn't work, cool. But yeah, if we have any TV directors listening, hi, I would love to try. I would love to try to score your film.
Well, and just last week I was interviewing Cecilia McDowell. Do you know her work at all?
I don't think so.
Oh, she's wonderful. She's from England, and what I found so inspiring about her story too is that she didn't really start composing a lot until she was about 49 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, wow. And she's written like at this point, like 15 orchestral works and 100 choral works. Like she's extremely prolific. And it happened at a time in my life. Like I'm 43 and I'm thinking, oh, I'm starting to get tired. you know?
Well,
yeah, well, certain things, but but to think that she had this huge blossoming and huge career happen at that time in her life. And I think that's really inspiring.
oh, wow. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, you got to share some stuff with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear. And
And
girl, first of all, you do not look 43. So can we just put a pin in there right there? Like, ma'am,
oh, you are too kind.
teach
You're
us
too
your
kind.
ways. Like, what?
Oh. well, for all of you listening, if you have never seen any of Brittany Boykin's headshots, I think she has the very best headshots of any composer I've
Oh,
seen.
thank
oh
you.
yeah.
I'm long overdue for some new ones now. So, but thank
Oh
you.
yeah. Well, good. Yeah, you should get new ones like every 5 years because you're so photogenic. Just
Yeah,
keep putting them out there. They're awesome.
yeah, my hair keeps changing, and I'm like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, it has been such a joy to talk to you, and thank you for making the time. And I'm so excited to feature your music on this podcast.
oh, thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
We often perceive mentors from generations before us, but I realize more and more that inspiration comes to me in women of all ages. This is something special about Compose Like a Girl. It's a community of women I've looked up to for a long time, as well as current friends and peers like Brittany, and also emerging composers, both younger and older than me. The mentorship I do with these women inspires me daily. I love that Brittany and I touched on this, that so much inspiration and multifaceted support comes from our friends and other mentors in our lives. Compose Like a Girl was produced by Justin Schell, Laura Kreider, and me, Jocelyn Hagan, with special help from fellow composers Erica Malpass and Addie Struckman. The Compose Like a Girl theme music was composed by cellist Cicely Parnas. Thank you all for helping me with this vision. Thanks also to the Mirror Visions Ensemble and the St. Olaf Choir for their permission to use their recordings on today's episode. You can learn more about B.E. Boykin and her music at claviapress.com and by following her on social media. Check out the links in our show notes, visit jocelynhagan.com/compose like a girl, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram to listen to the music we talked about today, learn more about the Compose Like a Girl initiative, and check out past episodes. You can also find choral programming ideas by checking out the Compose Like a Girl choral series through Graphite Publishing. To ensure that we can keep bringing these conversations to you, please consider joining our Compose Like a Girl Patreon page and giving what you can. And you can subscribe to the Compose Like a Girl podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're so moved, rate us on Apple Podcasts and share it with a few friends who you think will find inspiration. Until next time, trust your instincts. Be brave and unapologetic for your talents. Thanks for listening.